Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong says he's delighted to hear that Australia will be allowing entry to visa holders from Singapore. His counterpart, Scott Morrison, earlier announcing that both countries are in the final stages of concluding a quarantine-free travel bubble that could be established within the next week. The initial plan, according to the Sydney Morning Herald newspaper, is to allow vaccinated students and business travellers to fly between Singapore and Australia before it opens up to tourists. The arrangement would also depend on the quarantine restrictions of Australia's individual states. It's been 19 months since Australia shut its international borders and has been allowed only limited travels from overseas.
We are in the final stages of concluding an arrangement with the Singapore government. I was in a position, as you know, some months ago when I met with the Prime Minister of Singapore, Prime Minister Lee in Singapore, to set up a new arrangement which will see our borders open more quickly to Singapore. We anticipate that being able to be achieved within the next week or so, as we would open up to more visa class holders coming out of Singapore. We will see that occur to those ports here in Australia that will be open in the same way as they are here in Sydney, and we would expect to see that align pretty much with the timetable that Qantas has announced today regarding when they'll have flights going to Singapore.
Expressing his delight in a Facebook post, PM Lee also had this to say: Singapore and Australia have robust economic and investment links and warm people-to-people ties. Look forward to resuming close connectivity between our countries as we move towards an endemic COVID future. With vaccinated students one of the first groups to benefit from this bubble, how do they feel about today's news? Well, joining me is Clarissa Low. She's a second-year student at the University of Melbourne, but has been in Singapore since April 2020. Also with us is Heather Gan, who is in a PhD program at the University of Wollongong, about 80 kilometers from Sydney. Let's first get your reaction to the announcement. Heather, why don't you start?
Yeah, well, I was pretty excited to hear this new bubble opening. I am still a bit skeptical of it though, because there's been so much talk of it happening multiple times since lockdown. And perhaps, hopefully that this is the time where it actually comes to fruition. So I was actually quite excited because I haven't been home for approximately 21 months and really keen to come back and visit everyone again.
Clarissa, what about you? You're in your second year right now. Are you hopeful that with this likely travel bubble, you'll be able to return to Melbourne for your third year?
Yes, definitely. I've done almost half of my degree online, and I believe that there are many students like myself who have either spent a really short time on campus before returning back home, or have never stepped foot onto campus before. And for the last year and a half, I've been constantly, keeping myself up to date with the news, trying to look for any signs or possibilities that international students might be able to return to campus. And so far, there hasn't been any concrete plans or good news until today. With Australia making really big strides in bringing their vaccination rates up, I am hopeful that this might finally be our chance to return to campus to experience the proper student life.
And Clarissa, I understand as well that you're shouldering quite a responsibility. You're the president of the Singapore Students' Society at the University of Melbourne. How have you kept your members' spirits up?
Right, no doubt the last year and a half has been very demoralizing for many of us students who are stuck here, as we feel like we are missing out on a lot. However, it's precisely during trying times like this where a society can really come in and make a difference in improving the university experience of our members. We try to come up with social events that are either online or in person to bring Singaporeans together. And there is something to offer to everyone, regardless of whether our members are in first year or third year, or whether they're in Singapore or in Melbourne doing remote learning. And there is just something very comforting about knowing that you're not facing this alone and that there is a community out there who's able to support you throughout this confusing time. After hearing today's news on a possible travel bubble with Australia, we are definitely feeling very hopeful and we would love to be able to assist our members, in their return back to Melbourne, with possible information sessions or perhaps alumni sharing in the near future.
Heather, now over in Australia, you mentioned early on that you've been stuck in Australia for 21 months now. Tell us more, what have you gone through throughout this whole period? How have you coped financially and emotionally?
Yeah, well, I think that, with COVID being a pandemic, there's so much uncertainty with everything. And so I think initially in Australia, it wasn't as strict as in Singapore. We didn't really have to wear masks when we were outside. And it came a time where the Greater Sydney region just experienced an influx of COVID cases. So we became going into really strict lockdown, and we just got out of lockdown about 2 weeks ago. So for 4 months, we weren't allowed out at all except for essential services or to see the doctor. So I guess during that period, there's been a huge variation in what I've managed to do, because initially we did get a lot of freedom. Life still proceeded pretty much as normal. I could travel interstate, see my friends, but during the lockdown, we weren't able to do any of that. So it's been a lot of, trying to exercise at home, trying to meal prep, occupying our time. It's also been a bit difficult in the sense that we didn't have an end date to the lockdown. It was initially meant to be a month, then it got extended another month, and then 2 more months. So I think everyone's spirits were quite low during that period of time. In regards to coping, I was quite all right financially because I am on a stipend scholarship. So that has been really helpful. And I also got a job during the lockdown period so that in the financial aspect, I wasn't really struggling, which was really lucky for me. And I guess emotionally, it was quite tough with all the very sudden changes and restrictions imposed on us. I think that everyone's sort of in a state of languishing where we're kind of distressed, not necessarily flourishing. And that has taken quite a huge toll on many people's mental health.
Mm. Heather, fingers crossed, of course, travel bubble happens. What preparations do you need to make in order to return to Singapore?
Yeah, so I guess concerning preparations, I haven't really thought too much into that, to be honest, because I'm still a bit skeptical until there's a formal release and, we're allowed to book our air tickets and come back home. I'm still in the state where perhaps I don't really want to make too many preparations. But work-wise, because I do have a job here and I am considered an essential worker, perhaps talking to my management about the possibility of taking leave. They are all quite supportive because they know I haven't been home for a really long time. So they have said that, they will grant leave if the bubble opens and I need to return back to Singapore.
Heather, Clarissa, thank you so much for setting aside time to come onto the show to speak with us. All the best to the both of you.